but I'm a terrible, terrible movie podcast host, and that I was kind of confused by. Like, I don't know who the fuck Daisy Ridley is.
She's from Star Wars.
Rey in Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Well, you gotta say it in Gene terms. She's the girl with the stick, Gene. The girl with the stick.
Oh, stick girl. Yeah.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And along with us today, we are pleased to introduce our guest host, Rob Will Taylor. Rob has been helping out with the edit on History of the World, did a fantastic job there, which was a huge relief this week. Also, he is the infamous commissioner of Halloween 3, complete with that ultra creepy jingle. Rob, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Each week, we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, we are on YouTube and Twitch. You can follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel at shatpod.com/Twitch or look for Shat The Movies on YouTube. There we play video games, we host watch parties, sometimes we edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing today?
Gene, this week, I'm just a mixed bag of emotions. I'm very excited. We have Rob with us to give us a different perspective from across the pond, hands across the ocean, as our good friends say. But also I'm a little bit nervous. A lot of times when we do our last string of films has been a little bit abstract. There's no expectations coming in. This is a Jaws episode. This is a cornerstone of 70s, 80s, 90s cinema. There's a lot of pressure that comes with this.
Yeah, and Rob's very clever because we asked Rob after he volunteered to edit History of the World, what movie do you want to do? Look forward on our schedule and see what do you want to do? What are you looking at? And he quickly took a look and spotted The Godfather, which got us all very excited. But I mean, this is, like you said, Big D, it's low pressure when we're doing a Ice Pirates. It's low pressure when we're doing a Student Bodies. When you've got The Godfather, you can't get it wrong, especially if you were to mix up Coppola and Scorsese. You wouldn't want to do something like that.
Definitely do not want to do that. So with that being said, I was very excited when one of our great listeners, Matt, wrote in and said, please, can you go back and tell the tale that follows the powerful Vito and his reluctance on Michael as they navigate the power and betrayal in the 1972 epic crime drama, The Godfather.
And typically we'll have the commissioner write in and let us know why it is they wanted us to do the movie. I think this might be the greatest write-in that wasn't a write-in, which she just wrote in and said, Big D, please don't hate me. I'm going to get you an email ASAP. Unfortunately, I work for the water department, which covers Jersey City and Hoboken, and it hasn't been too good a week for us. Today, I'll get it to you.
So we'll add it to the end, but I can imagine what it was. I'm gonna come up with my hypothetical.
All
Matt
right.
Probably had I had a Sicilian grandmother, and she used to say what it was like back in Sicily, and I needed to watch this, and this became like a family moment. We'd watch the old country and learn about how we came to Ellis Island. That's what I'm envisioning his letter would be like.
I'm glad the racism and stereotyping is alive.
I'm
and well on this
Italian. My
podcast.
grandmother was Sicilian. They're my people. They're my paisans.
I mean, I'm Persian. We're like Middle Eastern Italian, so it all works out.
I wrote you when I was watching it. I said afangul. I used to hear that from my grandmother all the time.
Well, The Godfather is a 1972 epic crime film directed by Francis Ford Coppola, who co-wrote the screenplay with Mario Puzo. The film stars Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, James Caan, Richard Castellano, Robert Duvall, Sterling Hayden, John Marley, Richard Conte, and Diane Keaton. Looking awful. It is the first installment in the Godfather trilogy, chronicling the Corleone family under patriarch Vito Corleone, played by Brando, from 1945 to 1955. It focuses on the transformation of his youngest son, Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, from reluctant family outsider to ruthless mafia boss. The Godfather was the highest grossing film of 1972, earning more than $250 million at the box office. The film was well received by critics and audiences who praised its performances, direction, screenplay, writing, story, cinematography, editing, score, and portrayal of the mafia. At the 45th Academy Awards, the film won Best Picture, Best Actor for Brando, which we'll get to, Best Adapted Screenplay. In addition, the 7 other Oscar nominations included Pacino, Caan, and Duvall for Best Supporting Actor, and Coppola for Best Director. So Big D, Rob, we always ask our hosts where they were and what their memories are of the film we're covering. This week, it is The Godfather. Rob, as our esteemed guest, we'll start with you.
Well, I'd always heard about The Godfather, obviously, as a big movie, but I recorded it off the TV first when I was about 13, mainly out of interest because Slash was doing an amazing cover of the Godfather theme during all the Guns N' Roses gigs at the time, and I was mad into Guns N' Roses. But I didn't manage to get through it. I got through most of the wedding. I think my dad came in and didn't like Sonny and his lady friend at the door, so made me turn it off. And then I just had to tape over it as you did back in the day. You know, you had a certain amount of tapes. So from there, I just never got back round to it until when I went to university. I managed to get over to Memphis on exchange for a while and managed to watch the whole trilogy in order then. But I did it a slightly different way and managed to watch part 2 first, because that's what I was advised to do. It made a little bit more sense to me that way because I'd already seen who he would become. So seeing De Niro, his start, it actually made the movies a little bit better for me, I thought. But that was really the first time that I enjoyed them and watched them fully, and certainly the first movie.
Rob, I think you might be the only person who had Guns N' Roses as their gateway to The Godfather. But man, talk about recording over tapes. Like, this is some prime real estate. This is a 3-hour movie. You can record a lot of 30-minute sitcoms on that. You get a lot of Alf on there. But I remember those days when you had to decide, God, what do I record on this thing? I'm like you, Rob. I got into these in a totally different order. So I watched the Godfather movies as my family did. So for us, we didn't have a VCR until part 3, I think. So I was 10 years old. I saw part 3 and I thought, oh my God, this is the best mob movie ever. This is incredible. I think it might've been the only one I'd seen at that point. And little did I know that part 3 was the weakest of the trilogy, in my humble opinion. Like, even sexy Andy Garcia, who somehow is Italian in the movie, he couldn't save us from Sofia Coppola's delivery of "Daddy." And years later, I finally was able to get my hands on parts 1 and 2. They brought me tremendous joy. And like you, Rob, I do think that 2 explains things a lot better and kind of might be the one to kick off with if you've never seen The Godfather before.
So for me, I grew up in Mamaroneck, New York. I've talked about it before. Big Italian community. My grandmother, Sicilian, she came here from the old country. She set up family in Mamaroneck. So there is a lot of Italian pizza places in town. A couple of them are famous. Sal's is the most famous by far. I mean, this is probably at this point, a $50 million business. Dave Partnoy from Barstool Sports he said, quote, "When you look up pizza in the dictionary, it should say Sal's." So this is like a pizza mecca. So growing up, Sal's main rival was a place called Pizza Connection. Pizza wasn't as good, but they did have the video game consoles. So they had 2 of my favorite games. They had Joust and Tron. So we used to go out and rob the USA Today newspaper boxes. We found that we could access the coin thing. So we'd pull the coins out. We'd go there. And this place, wall to wall Godfather posters, framed pictures of the cast, autographs. These were proud Italians. So obviously this was something, I saw this and I was like, this has got to be something I could see. And it took years because at this point, rental stores were just starting. The old catalog wasn't available. So it was some years later before I watched this. And even then, I don't think I understood or could comprehend what was going on. But you could tell that there was a seriousness to this film that it wasn't what I would normally be watching.
And for those of you who are big fans of us going outside the 80s and 90s, we should point out that this is deep in the 70s for The Godfather. And I hope that we can continue this tradition on and kind of finish out the trilogy at some point. But before any of that, let's get to the trailer.
My father's no different than any other powerful man who's responsible for other people.
If I had this part in the picture, it puts me right back up on top again.
This Hollywood big shot's gonna give you what you want.
He says there's no chance.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
You know my father. The men are coming here to kill him.
Now you want to get mixed up in the family business?
I thought you weren't going to become a man like your father.
I never wanted this for you.
Fredo, you're my older brother, and I love you. But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again. Ever.
Michael, do you renounce Satan and all his works?
I do renounce him. Don't ask me about my business, Kate.
Is it true?
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
In 1945, Vito Corleone listens to requests during his daughter Connie's wedding to Carlo. Vito's youngest son, Michael, a former Marine who has thus far stayed out of the family business, attends with his girlfriend, Kay. When Johnny Fontaine, a popular singer and Vito's godson, asks Vito's help in securing a movie role, Vito sends his consigliere, Tom Hagen, to persuade studio president Jack Waltz to offer Johnny the part. Waltz refuses Hagen's request at first, but soon complies after finding the severed head of his prized racing horse in his bed. So those of you who have not seen The Godfather or not seen it recently, if you're thinking about watching it, but you're worried that you can't sit through a 3-hour movie, which is a legit concern, maybe it's a Friday night, you had a couple glasses of wine, a big belly full of pasta, am I going to make it through 3 hours? Stop worrying. This movie, it flies by. And it's a testament to the pacing. We spend the opening 20 minutes at a wedding, which I don't know if any movie's ever spent 20 minutes at a wedding, but I'm 100% engaged the entire time. There's so much activity, so many interesting conversations going on, so much character development, but none of it feels rushed. Coppola is definitely taking his time. And you can really take your time paying attention to all the little rituals and the interesting people. It's a very enjoyable experience.
It's not quite perfect for me, but there could be a couple of little minutes shaved off the wedding and later on in Sicily as well. But it's mainly just repeated shots. I mean, we get to see the Don's wife get up and sing. We see Johnny sing when he arrives, which is obviously a big deal because all the girls and Connie, who's the bride, is all over him. But do we need to see anybody else get up? You know, there's a couple of other people who get up and sing. We see a lot of meetings with Vito, the Godfather. Obviously, it's a tradition as well that he can't refuse an offer on his daughter's wedding day or a request. So we see a number of those. We also see Luca Brasi, who wants to just thank him for coming to his wedding, even though he's not invited. But, you know, some of those have the exposition in there, but they could be, you know, a few minutes shorter and still do the job. So, you know, for me, it's not quite perfect, but it is a good paced film all round, really.
I mean, you're right. Much like a wedding buffet, this is all what you want to get out of it. For me, seeing the old guy do like the dirty hand gestures, I don't know what he was singing about, but I was enjoying that. I liked seeing the kids. And then, there's different meetings with Vito, I think showed like the different approaches, right? Like you got Bonacera who's coming in and just directly asking for something. And then poor Luca Brasi, he's not asking for anything. He's just happy to be there, even though he wasn't invited.
Jesus, you're telling the story about your daughter getting attacked and assaulted, and they give you the tiniest little shot glass. So you're telling the story and you're sipping it. And listen, this episode, people, I know we hate when people do the detailed breakdown of how a film was shot and what was the creator's intent. That's not Shat The Movies. That's not what we are. And normally, I will find abusive parents and everyone's gay and stupid things that are going on in the plot. That's normally my thing. But this movie, I found myself, Gene, becoming like a more of a film connoisseur. And if you don't want to hear that, or you think I'm pretentious, this is not a shtick. This is actually changing me. I appreciate all the little things you guys just mentioned. The way that Coppola shoots this movie. The camera, again, 72. These cameras are gigantic. You couldn't exactly do tracking shots and following the cast. They don't follow characters as they move around. Instead, Coppola sets up a shot, beautiful shot, usually like a postcard shot that establishes the location, what's going on. Then he allows us to sit back. We're watching, almost like a living painting. The dialogue, people are coming in and out. The characters, they're coming, they're going out of frame. And the wedding is a beautiful example of this for me. It's subconsciously, I felt like I was reading a script. I could see the words in my head. And this is from the script, and this is what I'm seeing. Connie's wedding reception. Exterior. You hear the music, Connie's wedding song. Connie and Carlo are at the head table. The family gathers for a family portrait. The Don meets with some guests outside. Mama dances with Sonny's twin girls. Carlo laughing with the guests at the head table. Long shot of guests dancing. The FBI arrives. Clemenza dances with his wife. The FBI takes the license plates. This shit, it is right there. I'm soaking it in, and I can pick what detail to focus on. And I felt like I was watching something different than a lot of the 300 movies we've done previously.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that's really good about it was also realistic for the type of wedding that it is. The FBI show up and Sonny's spitting at them when he realizes it's not the press, it's the FBI. Barzini is the respected enemy, but he's also the most hated enemy of all the families. So he sits on the fringes. And as soon as someone takes a photo, his henchman's at him, grabs the camera, rips up the film. It's not just a big Italian wedding, but it's also a mob wedding. And that goes from the fringes and the outside all the way into the office, and with Vito and Tom and all the business that's being discussed. And it captures that really well.
And I'm thankful that the movie doesn't waste my time. At this point, we don't know who Barzini is. He's sitting there. Guy takes a picture. Immediately, they come over, take the camera, rips up the film. There's no, hey, you don't take a picture of Don Barzini. That could be used to prove he was here. There's none of that shit. When he goes out and he finds the FBI, he looks at the wallet. He spits on him. We know what's going on. Then he says, fucking FBI, whatever. But these little things that normally movies, and I know I complain about exposition, they don't need to say it. And I'm embarrassed to say that this is the first time I paid attention to on the poster. Everybody knows the poster. I always focused on Brando, but I never focused on Vito's cat. It is prominently in the middle of the poster. This cat was a stray that Coppola found on the set, was not originally in the script. He gave it to Brando. And yes, the cat in a big overall plot, it doesn't mean anything. But for me, the cat signifies so much more. Brando, he's focusing on this cat. And as a cat owner, you can't bullshit a cat. You don't fake a pet. You don't fake a tickling. A cat will know. A cat will run off. This cat was liking it. Brando was into the cat. This was his cat. That affection felt real. This whole scene felt real because Brando wasn't acting. He wasn't giving dialogue. He's just a guy sitting with his cat subtly, talking to all of the different groups that come in. And it was something very different. You can't fake that natural connection with a character. And Brando became Vito Corleone for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's why he ended up eventually with the Oscar. But the one thing that I found a little bit odd was why give the Undertaker a hard time? I mean, he's the one with the horrific story. He's just asking for a bit of justice, but he gives him such a rough time. His daughter's been so grossly wronged. It must be making his ears burn. The guy's in distress, and you're really going to need his services at some point. One of your kids is going to be shot up, or you're going to be shot up, or you're going to need...
Spoiler alert, Rob. Spoiler.
But, you know, even in your head, if you're the Don, you're going to need the Undertaker's services. You know, it just seemed harsh and unnecessary under the circumstances. You know, it's a happy day. This guy comes in with this horrible, sad tale. Just say yes and let him go on his way, and be rather than with this chiding. You know, that you've never come to me before. You've never so much as given me any respect. And it just seemed really... I mean, I guess it may have been a mind game. I guess it may be established that he can be a bit of a hard ass. But yeah, for me, it should have been simple. And that was the one bit that maybe didn't sit well with me. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I felt like the Bonacera thing was pretty insulting. Like, he keeps asking Don Corleone, like name a price. What is it going to cost? Don Corleone doesn't need your money. No. He doesn't need your fucking money. Listen, I got 2 cousins who run Happy Dad and Full Send, and Big D, you were able to meet them at my wedding. You know, these guys, I imagine on a daily basis, have to sit there and try to discern who is your friend, who is your family, who has been there since you were a kid, who actually comes over and cares about you and calls you on your birthday and gives a shit about you, and who are the people who want that exposure, that privilege. Because right now, like it or not, we operate in an attention economy, right? It can make or break you if you get your name on there. And, you know, we do a podcast. Our podcast is not nearly as big as the Full Send podcast. We're not as big as the Nelk Boys, Big D, much to our chagrin. We're not going to college campuses and having people do bottle service at our parties or anything like that. We don't even have parties. But the fact is, I would never in a million years ask these guys to promote us. Why? Because those are my cousins. I'm not asking them for anything ever. And that's what I loved when Luca Brasi, that's genuine love. That's genuine respect. And when you made it big, being able to tell who's a friend, who just wants something is hard. And to me, Bonacera coming to him, he just wants to use him as a tool, it seems like.
Dude, and the Don is about respect. The Don said, you never wanted me. You wanted to keep your life clean. I understand that. And he keeps telling him, hey, respect me. Then he blurts out, how much? And he goes, I've never been so insulted. As a big guy, I always get the phone call. Hey, hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. Could you help me carry a refrigerator 2 flights up? Oh, that'd be great. Anything, something big needs to be moved or something needs to be trucked, I'm the one that they call. Don't be that, because I'm like, I don't think I would have, even though I would have had to, you know, it's a Sicilian, it's his daughter's wedding day, but yeah, it took balls to come in there. Do something for me before you ask me to come move your furniture.
It's going to be like us with Rob, where we just keep hey, I see you're pretty good with audio. You want to maybe edit a podcast? Rob's like, hey, you know, you never asked me to be on an episode with you.
You did the long Good Friday night. You didn't think my experience would help.
Well, you
now
don't
you
think
come to me.
You don't think I like the Warriors?
Yeah, Johnny Fontaine causes a big stir when he arrives. And asked Vito to get him this big Hollywood role. And that's where we first hear this phrase, the infamous one, an offer he can't refuse. Leads to the horse's head. It's become something we use every day. Johnny was supposed to be based on Old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra. Allegedly, it caused quite a big stir with Frank himself. Really wound him up. There were rumours and reports that he argued and perhaps even brawled with Mario Puzo over this when they met, and he didn't like it because it portrayed him as having ties to the mob, which, you know, he supposedly did.
Of course.
We'll never know. But it's one of those things that they actually cut the character as a result. But how would you guys handle the offer you can't refuse?
I first want to address this entire paradox where Frank Sinatra's like, no, I have nothing to do with the mob. And then he's like, I don't like that this character who's in The Godfather is a lot like me. And then suddenly that character is cut a lot from the movie, which seems to be something that the mob would be able to take care of. But as far as the offer you can't refuse, Rob, I think you got to pick your battles in life. Like, I don't think I'm a coward by any means, but I don't think I'd want to fight with the Corleone family. And of course, with all of us, I mean, we are adults, we are men. There are inflexible issues. Like Big D, I imagine the safety of your family. You're not compromising on that. No matter what the threat, if it's a threat to your family, you've got to fight back. Breaking an oath that you've made, I think that makes sense. But Walt's here, the studio big shot, right? He's putting his pride ahead of his well-being. So Johnny fucked his young protege. Are you going to take on the mob for that? You know, he says, I'm no choir boy. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I don't think so. Instead, this is the smart thing you do. You got somebody like a Don Corleone, right? Here's what you do. To him, you know, sums of money are a lot less significant. To him, he's got all kinds of connections. I think the smart thing to do is negotiate for something you'd like. You know, be a lawmaker, be a congressman, right? In that sense. Don Corleone isn't unreasonable. Say, sure, I'll get Johnny into the movie. And, you know, to sweeten the deal, if he could do this for me, I'd really appreciate it.
Dude, he offers him what he's going to need. You're going to have problems with the union.
Yeah.
I can smush that. You need that. What's scary for me, besides the fact that I think it shows how the tentacles of the crime family are in movie, they're everywhere. It's the threat itself. It's not, I will kill you, I will do this. It's, you can't refuse it. That's so much more menacing.
Big D, you're such a naive young man. The union problems?
He'll create it. I know.
Okay. I wanted to make sure you got that. Okay.
No, of course. That's what he's saying. Yes.
Yeah.
He's saying, I'll create them now immediately. But if down the road you have a problem with some of your union employees, or you have scabbed actors coming in or scabbed people on the set, yes, of course, he's going to create the problem. I get that.
It's an awful nice shop here. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it.
Yes, I understand he's going to make it happen.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
But I more want to talk about, he makes the threat. It's implied. He's already shown what he cares about. His $600,000 horse, he's not going to race him. He's going to stud him. But I got to talk about the logistics here. You're up, you're in your silky bed. Let's just say he's had a couple drinks, you fall asleep. How do you cut a horse's head off that cleanly? Then you carry it up the bed, you get into the house, you place it at the foot of the bed under the covers. Is this something you could actually do, Gene?
I mean, yes. If you were to, heaven forbid, chop off one of my dog's heads, you could place in the bed with me. I wouldn't wake up until like 11 a.m. I am a very, very deep sleeper. I don't know about you guys.
Well, I think he most likely, the guy who drove him to the airport gave him the offer he can't refuse and got him to do it, put some drug, some night drug in the guy's food or whatever, sent him to sleep, cut it off, because obviously he'd have access to the house, and that's the most likely way to do it. But because obviously he asked for the ride to the airport, so he's got access to at least one of his people.
Well, that's a good point. You could have staged it like romantically. You could have had an embrace. Wake up like you're cuddling the horse head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this gets to the point that Tom Hagen is an absolute badass. So in remembering The Godfather, I always thought as Tom is like, he's like the lawyer. He's the straight laced one. Like he's the good boy of the family. Tom Hagen, now that I look at him as a 43-year-old man, I mean, he is stone cold badass. He's so smart. He's so controlled. But what I love about this character is they didn't make him heartless, right? It's Robert Duvall. He's not heartless in this role. When he's called racial slurs, he just corrects the race. He's not going to take the insult, right? And his bestowal of doom on Jack Waltz is just so smooth. Jack Waltz, he absolutely loses his shit, right? Which is, Big D talks about this all the time, right? The guy who's going into hysterics, the guy that's waving his arms and yelling, that's not the guy to be afraid of, right? That guy is posturing. It's the guy that's cool and collected that you should be worried about. And so Jack Waltz, he loses his shit. He says, there's no way Johnny's going to be in a fucking movie. And Tom, what does he do? He coolly asks for that ride back to the airport. And he says this line, which is probably the most chilling line in the film. He says, Mr. Corleone is a man who insists on hearing bad news immediately. I hear that and I'm like, I fucked up badly.
Totally agree. And I forget where we heard it, Gene. Violence is the last resort of the incompetent. No Corleone member except for Sonny ever loses their cool. And that's when you should fear someone. When they don't get it, we're not emotionally invested. It's all business.
Definitely. Robert Duvall is the glue that keeps the movie together. We nearly didn't have him, though, because Steve McQueen and James Caan both wanted the role. I mean, Steve McQueen would have been, interesting to say the least in that role. I can only imagine that they thought he was too old because he screen tested, but and I could see that he was too old, perhaps. But James Caan, thankfully he ended up as Sonny, so it's perhaps for the best, because he's also the other one that anchors the movie, and together they make you forget that Brando's not in the film for much of it because Vito's laid up in the hospital. Michael's off doing his thing in Sicily, and those are the two main protagonists for a good portion of the 3 hours.
You just know that Steve McQueen would have demanded to have like a shoulder holster. Maybe Tom Hagen rides a motorcycle.
No, he's too handsome. It's like Robert Redford. You don't need him in the role of an attorney. You need somebody a little grimy, losing their hair, somebody who's down in the dirt. McQueen's too put together. He's too handsome. Too handsome for that role. You need an ugly lawyer. Sorry, James Caan.
Mark. Yeah, well, I was gonna say, man, mark this episode as one where Big D called Robert Duvall ugly.
No.
As Christmas approaches, drug baron Sollozzo asks Vito to invest in his narcotics business. Vito declines, citing that involvement in narcotics would alienate his political connections. Suspicious of Sollozzo's partnership with the Tattaglia crime family, Vito sends his enforcer Luca Brasi on an espionage mission, where Brasi is killed. Later, enforcers gun down Vito and coerce Hagen into a meeting. With Vito's firstborn, Sonny, now in command, Sollozzo pressures Hagen to persuade Sonny to accept the narcotics deal. Vito survives the shooting and is visited in the hospital by Michael, who thwarts an attempt on his father's life, but is beaten by corrupt police captain Mark McCluskey.
So at Shat The Movies, we've done a bunch of iconic films with crime bosses. And I want to make the case for Don Corleone and Vito to be the best, just so I kind of set the ballpark of what I was thinking. The ones in my head I came up with is you got Don Corleone, we got Tony Montana from Scarface, Kaiser Soze. I said it, Gene. Was that right? Did I say it right? I think I said it right.
Soze.
Oh, shit, whatever. We got Bill the Butcher, Gangs of New York. We got Frank Costello from The Departed. We got Nino Brown from New Jack City, and then Marcellus Wallace. All these guys are the crime bosses. You got to have a similar thing. You got to have charisma. You got to be smart. You got to be situationally aware. You got to be ruthless. You got to be loyal. You got to have a code of ethics. You got to have an iconic quote. The make an offer you can't refuse has to be one of the best. Vito instills fear in everyone who just hears his name, but yet he's also vulnerable. He'll go out and play in the yard with the kids. He'll come back and have someone killed, even though he says, it's not what we do. They'll do it if it's required. He delegates his assets perfectly like a general. What are we going to do out in LA? I can't send Luca Brasi out to LA to intimidate a studio boss. I'm going to get Tom. He uses his assets perfectly. He manages this like it is a big time business, like a criminal enterprise. And Gene, I talked to you about on this watch, I picked up how aware he is of everything that's going on. It's his daughter's wedding day. He's in the office. He's taking offers. That's when the singer comes in and says, hey, I need help with this. And he slaps him and says, be a man. In walks Sonny. The Don just looks at him. The Don knows he's upstairs banging that other girl. He then turns to the singer. What that was his name? Shit.
Johnny Fontaine.
Yes. He then turns to Johnny and says, Johnny, how's your family? You taking care of your kids? A man who doesn't take care of his family can never be a man. And then he throws like some shade, like a side eye at Sonny. He's aware of everything. He's even aware Sonny's banging somebody upstairs when they're not even in the room. He is by far, hands down, the best crime lord that we've reviewed.
Yeah, you definitely see this when he lets Michael sideline Tom for him as the consigliere. It's harsh on Tom, but I'm not sure that I buy that it's just to protect Fredo and their interests out in Las Vegas. I think there is a bit about them not being true family, certainly in Michael's head. But when Michael wants to go legit later, he brings Tom back because that's his skill set. Mm-hmm. And Michael does inherit that from his dad, that same skill set. But again, it's that same thing of using your assets perfectly all the way through. He doesn't want Michael involved because he wants to keep Michael clean to use on the political side. He doesn't particularly want to share the political contacts he has because they're for Michael. He wants him in that political arena that he's overlooking his best skills, which are basically his military past.
And as we're talking about Michael and kind of his virtues, the other thing that I really want to point out is Michael's ability as a communicator. One of our frequent complaints about movies is the lack of communication between characters. So many times we've seen a person just had to communicate one simple phrase and they could have solved the whole problem. Now, in a tragedy, that makes sense, right? You got your dramatic irony. A person is not supposed to say the thing, and that's what's driving the audience wild and getting this worked up into a frenzy. But I can't count how many times, Big D, you and I have watched a film and screamed, if you just told the person X, you could have avoided Y. And Michael is not about that life. When men are coming to kill his father and the nurse isn't cooperating, he doesn't say like, oh, just trust me. I can't tell you why he has to move. We just have to do it. Or do some sort of like Robert Redford sneakers covert operation. No, he says, nurse, men are coming to kill my father. We need to move him to another room. And it's just so brilliant that he does that effectively throughout the movie, where he just says the thing that needs to be said to move things along.
Yeah, he's also quite a clever and cold manipulator. He does it to Kay repeatedly. He always tells her to go home rather than dumping her, because he knows she's useful. She's an option because she's got a rich Kennedy-like family, very useful for political connections, over on Martha's Vineyard or wherever she lives. Yeah, the last scenes of the movie, they're just pure stone-cold manipulation of her. Whether she knows she's being manipulated and is just settled for that life is up for debate. But the look on her face and the look on his face when that door closes, it says a lot. But probably the worst one is he manipulates Apollonia's father in Sicily. He's basically decided, I'm going to fuck your daughter. And he's tried being nice about it, admittedly. He's tried to get to know the family. And he just, in the end, just says, as Gene says, he says what needs to be said. Look, I'm a big-time American gangster. And basically, if you don't let me marry your daughter or fuck her, you're basically going to get killed. And, of course, next scene is them getting married. So, he knows what he's doing all the time.
Come on, Rob. There's got to be a better word than fuck. What's a better British slang for?
Shag.
I'm going to give it a proper shagging.
Bang. Yeah. But that's too Austin Powers, really, isn't it?
He's really ruined it for everyone.
Yeah.
But, historically...
Austin Powers in The Godfather. Yeah,
there you go. Playing all the roles. It's Mike Myers as Don Corleone. Mike Myers as other Don Corleone. But guys, historically, while watching this movie, as an innocent young man, I always thought that this Apollonia move was a total jerk move, right, by Michael. And I've never been a fan of discussing movies from the perspective of other people with whom we've watched those movies. This used to come up in the early days of Shat Big Deal all the time, where, Roger would be talking about, oh, he watched it with this woman, or you'd say that Vanessa and you were watching it, or I would go on about a movie. And I'm always like, I kind of cringe because I'm like, I don't know if the listeners give a shit about what the other people in the room thought. They give a shit about what we thought. But Sarah gave me some really interesting perspective on Michael in this Apollonia situation. Because I asked her if he was a jerk for leaving Kay hanging and marrying Apollonia. And her response surprised me. And Rob picked up on this as well. She said, Michael's not a jerk because he signaled to Kay at the dinner before he went to the hospital to visit his father that the relationship was over, or at least that she'd been put on pause, right? Because what did he say? He said, go back to New Hampshire, go back to your family. He knew that the fallout from his father's shooting could transform him from the Marine she loved into aspects of his family that she couldn't abide. And it's not saying that he's letting go of that forever. He's keeping her on ice, again, as an asset that he might be able to use later. So, when we talk about Michael's change here, right, he's not, until the very end, really strictly lying to anybody. He's manipulating them, but he's manipulating them in ways that they kind of accept.
Yeah, and as I said, the jerk move is telling Apollonia's father exactly who he is. I mean, he could have said anything other than, I'm a gangster on the run, or I'm the gangster on the run, which they would have heard about because news would have travelled. And it obviously either impressed or scared him enough to allow the union. But it also made them targets, and it cost Apollonia her life. Michael made clear to Kay he was going down the road that she wasn't going to like, and that from day one, he'd been upfront about it with her. This is my family. I'm trying to avoid this life, but there was always a good chance he was going to get sucked back into it. And by taking her back, he's basically settling for a loveless life. But he gets a trophy wife that will keep up appearances. He's always got that air of legitimacy. But she wanted to be a senator's wife, but now she's basically going to be a gangster's mom.
Yeah, and it's one of the sadder moments we've seen in film as well, that stroll that they're taking, Kay and Michael, as they're walking, and basically he drops the "I love you." He knows that that's the thing that she's been waiting to hear. She's somewhat pacified by that, but there's no joy in that moment. There's no romance in this moment. He signals the car, he opens the door, she gets in. He's as you said, Rob, he's manipulating, he's pulling those strings, but it's terribly sad. That both of these people just settled for that loveless life, and it's all just putting pieces in place, which is the antithesis of what we would think is romance. After Sonny retaliates with a hit on Bruno Tattaglia, Sollozzo and McCluskey request to meet with Michael and settle the dispute. Michael agrees to meet at a Bronx restaurant where he retrieves a handgun planted in the bathroom by Corleone capo Clemenza and shoots his father's enemies dead. Despite a police clampdown, the five families erupt in open warfare. Michael takes refuge in Sicily, and Fredo, Vito's second son, is sheltered by Mo Green in Las Vegas. Back in New York, Sonny attacks and threatens Carlo for abusing Connie. And when Carlo abuses her again, Sonny speeds to their home, but is ambushed and murdered by gangsters at a highway toll booth.
So as I said, I'm kind of sitting back watching this as an observer, and you're seeing the family go through these challenges, and I'm starting to think, like, what would I do? What would somebody else do? Now, Vito, he's been able to keep it together because one of his powers is his restraint and his ability to take personal feelings out of an equation. Vito is shot. Sonny's put in charge of the family. He's obviously a hothead. If you were in Michael's spot, Sonny's spot, Gene and Rob, would you be able to actually step back, turn off the anger about the attempted murder of your father and the murder of your brother, and think about this from a business standpoint?
Sonny was already interested in the drugs from the money point of view before Vito was shot. Vito wasn't interested in that at all. So as Sonny, it's going to be hard to react any way other than he did. He's hot-headed, he's impulsive, and Michael, by taking the revenge, he knows he has to go out the picture anyway. So Sonny is inherently going to be taking over.
But could you, if someone personally struck someone you loved, would you be able to logically react, or is it human nature to lash out?
Me personally, yes, because I'm autistic. So I find it quite easy to separate emotion. But I certainly wouldn't go violent straight away. I'd be looking at other ways to hit them. That wouldn't necessarily be illogical.
Straight away. It's in his playbook. He'll keep it in his pocket for a while, but down the road, he'll
I'd be the kind of person. I'd be like Michael. I'd probably already know a couple of ways to hit them.
Gene, I know you'd kill him. You'd kill him. I know you'd kill him. I know you'd kill them.
No, actually, I don't think I would. And here's why. It's the occupational hazard, right? I think it's understood that if you're in a mob family, that fair play is fair play. And so people get killed. It's part of the job. And I don't think that, Big D, I can't speak to it, only being Air Force Junior ROTC veteran. But the fact of the matter is, in war, people get killed, right? That's what happens.
That's true.
And so I think at the same time, if somebody's a soldier, you can't really be angry at a soldier from the other side for killing your comrade. That's what they're there to do. And so you agree to the game when you sign up. Now, hitting innocents, I think, is a different story.
I think you're right. I would tolerate if Vanessa was in the business. If somebody put a hit on her, it's business. But if you got Emma, it's collateral, then, okay. That's a good point, yeah.
And so all the result of the planning leads up to the dinner. And this is how you do tension. Everything from the moment Michael enters the restaurant is just dripping with it, especially when for the split second it takes a little too long to find the gun, and you start to think he's been double-crossed. They didn't do it, or they couldn't do it. and he's searching and searching behind the cistern, and he heads back out. But the masterstroke was casting Sterling Hayden, who was an icon of the 50s as McCluskey. And this guy always played arrogant types. And in this, he believes he's untouchable. He's just so cocky, totally dismisses Michael as beneath him when he punches him in the street, and didn't get his way with Vito being killed. And when he gets up to the bathroom, he just doesn't care. But that then leads to the shocked look when he actually shoots him. And how he sells it is one of the best bits of the movie, and one of the shots that actually makes the movie epic. And it sells how big a move it is for Michael, because he's seen as the one who's never going to make a move, never going to do anything. And he's just turned the whole game on its head. Nobody would ever think of shooting the police captain dead in public, much less the war hero.
You know, Rob, my favorite part of that whole scene is how, Sollozzo is speaking Italian to Michael, and the Italian, at first it's audible, it's distinct, and then it kind of turns into this background babble, and you hear the sound of that train building up, and it's paralleling the pressure in Michael's head, right? As all of this is building up to that moment of action. And then it just turns to fuzz, and it sounds almost silly. Like this guy is talking to him, not knowing that his death is imminent. And then the tension is just broken by that blasting away. I thought it was such a good, point. And there are several points in this movie where I think if I were in the theater in the 70s, I would have stood up and cheered. And I can't imagine that the audience didn't at that point. It's such a triumphant moment in such a dark moment.
Definitely.
In Sicily, Michael meets and marries a local woman, Apollonia, but she is killed shortly thereafter by a car bomb intended for Michael. Devastated by Sonny's death and tired of war, Vito sets a meeting with the 5 families. He assures them that he will withdraw his opposition to their narcotics business and forego avenging Sonny's murder. His safety guaranteed, Michael returns home to marry Kay and become head of the Corleone family. Vito reveals to Michael that Don Barzini ordered the hit on Sonny. With Vito's support, Michael relegates Hagen to managing operations in Las Vegas and travels to Vegas to buy out Green's stake in the family casinos. There, Michael is dismayed to see that Fredo is more loyal to Mo Green than to his own family.
So when we first met Michael, he is the reluctant member of the crime family. He's outside. He's a civilian. They don't consider him a member of the family. And Coppola spends a lot of time on this transition, and it's a lot of mundane shit. When we first meet him, he's late to the wedding. They're holding up the family photo. They're showing that he's on his own timeline. He's the war hero. The Don loves him. He's obviously the favorite child. And every step, even though it seems mundane, we're watching him slowly change. And over time, whether it's Sonny's murder, whether it is the Don getting shot, exile in Italy, the courtship of Apollonia, her murder, each of these is transforming Michael and Al Pacino's performance in a way that it changed the way he looked. I thought in the beginning he was kind of weak. I didn't think he had it. Each one seems to toughen him up and change him. So by the end, he is a completely different character. And Gene, we complain about other movies having sudden changes, heel turns that weren't deserved. This, we were all along the journey with Mike as he went and flipped the switch and became that ruthless killer. When it happens, we're just like, yep, yeah, that's Michael. That's where he is now.
Yeah, agreed. It's a masterful performance, and it's really sad that Al didn't get the Oscar for it, but Brando did and never actually showed up for it, causing quite a lot of controversy that year. Pacino wasn't the first choice, though, and the studio wanted Robert Redford. Then they wanted Jack Nicholson. And at one point, they wanted Warren Beatty to star as Michael and direct the film. So,
wow,
it's pretty scary how far away this movie could have been from what we got. But like I mentioned earlier, people forget with Michael the story of his medals. He's got this wide range of them, the Purple Heart, the Silver Star, the Naval Star, which he actually gets later in the film, working with the theory that it would take some time to be awarded. And the way I think Al is playing him is that he's seen some real shit, and he's had to kill some people long before he's come back to this. So he doesn't want any more of it, and just wants to be legit, just doesn't want any of the family, doesn't want any of it. And his dad respects that, but he just keeps getting pulled back in no matter what he does. And when he finally has to pull out those triggers, it's like, right, I'm back in now and I'm all in.
Big D, you mentioned Michael's development throughout this movie. I felt like it was a microcosm for Al Pacino and his development over like his career. Seeing him this young, I think it's the youngest I've seen him. It made me realize that he was kind of this hourglass for our entire generation, right? You think of 70s Pacino, it was kind of the 70s for America. Like that's how we looked at him. 80s Pacino had an 80s thing. And then we get to, the point where we're at like Devil's Advocate or Son of a Woman, and we've just gone off the fucking rails with Pacino, where he's become a character or a caricature of himself. And I thought it was kind of neat to think about the fact that he sort of changed in the way our culture changed, even his haircuts, his outfits, the way he acts. Like when he became more bombastic as America became more bombastic. It's a really weird thing to watch.
I think he also transitioned. There's a parallel between him and Vito. By the end of Vito's life, he's walking the streets, he's buying fruit, he's being a little aloof. That's Pacino, man. Pacino right now, you offer him a check, he'll take a role. He doesn't care. He'll do whatever you want. He'll go walk the streets. So I think he's much like the Don. I don't think he's much longer for this world.
Whoa! In 1955, Vito dies of a heart attack while playing with Michael's son, Anthony. At Vito's funeral, Tessio asks Michael to meet with Barzini on the same day as the baptism of Connie's baby. While Michael stands at the altar as the child's godfather, Corleone hitmen murder the Dons of the five families, plus Mo Green, and Tessio is executed for his treachery. Clemenza kills Carlo for his part in Sonny's murder. And when Connie confronts Michael about Carlo's death, Michael denies involvement. Relieved, Kay leaves as capos enter the office and pay reverence to Michael as Don Corleone behind a closing door.
So most people know Talia Shire as Adrian from Rocky, but she's actually Francis Ford Coppola's sister. And his daughter Sophia appeared, who quite infamously in Godfather 3 is in the movie as a newborn. She was actually like born during the filming and she's a baby in the film. Both his parents and both his sons. And the only one who's missing is his nephew Nicholas, or as we know him, Nick Cage. So it's kind of the OG Nepo family. And it's a little bit strange, but I couldn't help but feel like in this film that it's a bit like the Wayne's World situation. Couldn't we get a better actress for Connie? Maybe Natalie Wood or somebody like that. It's a really important role, but am I crazy, or could he have gone outside the family for that?
I mean, you're asking her to navigate among dramatic giants here, right? You're on set with Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, right? Robert Duvall, James Caan. I think she does exactly what she needs to do in this movie. And it is nowhere, Rob, nearly as egregious as casting Sofia Coppola in The Godfather 3. That is like, she nearly ruins the whole movie. And it's not a great movie to begin with.
Yeah, and if you remember, anybody who listened to our Apocalypse Now review will know The Godfather was not Coppola's like master, his opus. He only did this to get funding to do his true dream work, which was Apocalypse Now. So yeah, throw your family in there. You got to renovate your house, Gene. Get your cousin to paint. Get your other cousin who's a landscaper. Make it a family event.
Also, this movie's got like 200 people in it. Like eventually you just run out of budget. You're like, all right, Dad, Mom, here's my kid. Fuck, we're fine.
I need some more Italians. Do we need any more? Get more
the
Italians.
Screenplay called for a baby. You had a baby. What are you going to do?
A cat? Hey, I found a cat on set. Maybe he was just utilizing his assets like the Don.
To be fair, if it doesn't happen like this way, we don't get Rocky. So, it happens for a reason. But.
Yeah.
And one thing you guys may notice now, we've analysed the film, and it's pretty much, The Godfather's pretty much the template for any gangster movie that's come after it. There's always a rookie, there's always a risky heist, there's always a fall from grace, and a master plan that will consolidate the power, where the rat or a rival, or many rivals in this case, is taken out. Scorsese uses it, Michael Mann uses it, and pretty much everyone since this film has used it, whether it's Henry Hill and Tommy as the rookies with the Lufthansa heist and the Layla scene with all the bodies in the ice truck. Of course, the fall of grace from Henry in Goodfellas. Is The Godfather the best gangster movie for you? If not, what is?
Yeah, it absolutely is for me. I think it just does everything better. And you pointed out Goodfellas. And what really crystallizes for me is you think about Ray Liotta's heel turn in Goodfellas, right? Versus Michael's heel turn in The Godfather, if you can even call it that, right? Michael, he doesn't need something as extreme and melodramatic as a drug addiction or vanity or womanizing to become a tragic figure. It's far more ambiguous and yet far more sinister, because the tragedy here is that he is in control, and it's seeing what happens to him as a person for what you could arguably consider noble reasons. That's the crazy thing about this character and the crazy thing about this story, right? What's the main impetus here? He wants the family to survive, right? And unfortunately, in this world that they exist in, you've pointed it out, Rob, and Big D, you alluded to it as well, is that weakness spells the death for the family. You cannot be weak in this world. There's no, to quote Rocky IV, there is no easy way out, right? So in that sense, he wants a family to survive. He wants to honor his father. He's a good son. By all means, he is a good son to his father. He wants to avenge his brother, Sonny. And in doing so, he has to do a couple of things. He has to become a liar. He has to become a murderer, and he has to become an evil man. But he's not doing it for any of the reasons that we would classically think of as bad reasons.
I would be friends with them. If I knew them as a family, I would want to go have dinner with them. I wouldn't go have dinner with any of the crew, Ray Liotta, them and Goodfellas. They seem like, I know they do horrible things and they're bad people, but they are level-headed. It's a business. You're not involved in. They seemed like this was, you could know these people. And it was something that made it more grounded and felt more real than any of the other heists. There was nothing in this that stretched my plausible ability to believe the plot.
But he lied to his own wife.
Well, he had to. You got to do what you got to do.
Okay.
You got to do what you got to do. It made her feel good in that moment, but then when she looks back, she knows he's lying.
He also killed 5 dudes that he didn't really even know.
Shit happens. It's a cost of doing business.
So it's 50 years on now since The Godfather. Can you believe that? And with the lack of creativity in Hollywood, their desperation post-strike for hits, and with Coppola aging, it seems almost inevitable we're going to see the remake of The Godfather. We recently had The Offer, the Apple TV series about the process of getting it made. But if they're going to announce tomorrow that the dreaded cannoli was being taken, who would you guys like to see in the roles? For me, it'd be Robert De Niro as Vito, Oscar Isaac as Michael, Joaquin Phoenix as Fredo.
Yes.
So, John Bernthal from The Punisher would be Sonny. Daisy Ridley would be Kay. Colin Farrell, Tom Hagen. Someone like Lily Collins as Connie. Someone like Dua Lipa as Apollonia, because it'd only be a small role. So, yeah, very open to you guys.
Would Dua Lipa have a musical number? Is that why you're getting there?
No, but she could do a tie-in. But, I guess. There'd have to be a tie-in for the kids.
I like that.
The Godfather theme.
Yeah, Rob's thinking in 2023 terms. I like it. Clearly, this is a bit of an older cast. So De Niro as Vito, that's kind of fitting, considering he's already played the role and mysteriously had that beauty mark that must have been removed, and nobody seemed to care about that. But Rob, I got to point out, you know way more current actors than I do, because I was looking at this list and I'm like, I don't know all these people. Now that you've placed them for me, I do. But I'm a terrible, terrible movie podcast host, and that I was kind of confused by. Like, I don't know who the fuck Daisy Ridley is.
She's from
Star Wars. Rey in Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Well, you gotta say it in Gene terms. She's the girl with the stick, Gene. The girl with the stick.
Stick girl. Yeah,
stick girl who's going and scrapping from the.
Now, who's Lily Collins?
She's Phil Collins' daughter. She's in. Can't tell you what she's in, but she's got interesting eyebrows. She
does have interesting I've never seen her in my life.
Okay, I have one request. My Fredo will be Jude Law.
No,
yes.
I can't think of Joaquin Phoenix is a perfect Fredo.
You think so?
Jude Law is like 80 years old now, too.
But Joaquin Phoenix isn't slimy. I don't think.
Are you kidding me?
You think he's slimy?
Did you see the Joker?
Yeah, but that was sad. That was sad and damaged, not like Schwarmy. But if I had more time, but the Dua Lipa, I keep picturing her doing her music video in a car, driving around in a circle. Her song would have to be about, I'm learning to drive. She's driving around that little circle.
And then it blows up.
And it blows up. Yeah.
Yes, that's how it ends. Yeah.
Big finish. All right. And speaking of big finishes, now is the time when we give our Shat score for The Godfather. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get out of respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's when you show up in a town with beautiful Italian ladies and all the men are dead from vendettas. 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie, is whatever the monsters who made this movie did to make Diane Keaton look the way she did. We'll go ahead and start with you, Big D. What is your wipe score for The Godfather?
Gene, 2 hours and 45 minutes have never gone by so fast. The dialogue respects the characters. The performances are iconic. You look at this cast we just talked about. It's who's who. The roles are great. I think the cinematography, it's a beautiful film. These could be wallpapers on all of our computers. And I like that the plot made me feel like I was just observing what was going on. It didn't take any kind of position. It didn't try to make me feel that what the family was doing was morally wrong. We were just watching the family go. It was like a Norman Rockwell painting. If Norman Rockwell painted violence and death and murder, it came to life. And I think Coppola's vision transferred the words from the screenplay to me. I was like listening to an audio book, and this fit exactly what I was seeing in my head. I felt like I lived in their world. I was part of it. 2 hours and 45 minutes flew by. I think The Godfather is storytelling at its best. I can't think of a way to make it better. It's 0 wipes for me.
Well, I'll help you out with that, Big D. This movie admittedly is nearly perfect. The cast is top notch. The cinematography is beautiful, as you mentioned. That blend of symbolism and sentimentality and action and strategy makes it eternally watchable. This movie will forever be entertaining, but there are a few flaws when you get really specific. For one, I didn't feel like any of the Corleones were related. Sonny, Michael, Tom, Fredo, they're all very, very different. And I thought that was a little too convenient to establish some archetypes. They were raised by the same parents in the same household. So they should have had a little more in common. It was a little too much. And 2, the other gripe is it's possible that Vito and Michael were just a little too OP in this movie, just a little too clever, a little too smart. I would have liked to see Michael fuck up at least once and maybe learn from that, but he's just perfect throughout. Thankfully, the sequels correct that and show a little bit of flaws there. But to me, I can't say it's a perfect movie. It's a quarter wipe for me.
So Gene, Michael didn't make a mistake. He didn't sniff out the assassin. He made a mistake. It cost his wife her life. If Mike was OP, Mike would have found out that one of the bodyguards was thinking about turning on him. He would have strung him up, killed him. He paid the price for not being perfect.
I would say it was a minor inconvenience at best.
Okay.
I mean, he seemed not terribly affected by it.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And I suppose the other side of it as well was he was OP because he came back from the war. OP, you know, he was a soldier. He was a killer. He had all that army OP.
I mean, I don't know. Still smells a little too convenient for me. So 0 wipes from Big D, quarter wipe from me. Rob, it comes down to you. What is your wipe score for The Godfather?
There's no disputing this is one of the greats, and it still holds up after 50 years. It set the bar and the template for the gangster movie, and it launched careers that shaped the business for decades. And Brando holds up in its probably his last ever serious role. You feel for him when he's at the funeral home when Sonny dies. And I was glad this time round when I watched it, Vito gets what is actually a really nice death for a gangster. You know, the grandson playing with him was moving. You know, I really thought that was nice. For all the style, the film is going to live or die on the 2 big set pieces, the restaurant and the master plan. And both still pack a punch. Captain McCluskey being shot, it really still resonates. Michael's look at Kay as all the new heads are pledging fealty to the Don, and he's coldly lied. It's still chilling. Pure cinema, but a few minor cuts here and there would have made it perfect. So I'm going 0.5 wipes.
All right, that's half a wipe from Rob, 0 wipes from Big D, and a quarter wipe from me, which gives us an average wipe score of 0.25 wipes for The Godfather.
So, Gene, that now ties this in the 6th spot with some other big movies, Jurassic Park, Wayne's World, Grosse Point Blank, and Fargo. So slightly better than Terminator 2, Fight Club, Big Lebowski, slightly worse than our other perfect films, which were Dumb and Dumber, Back to the Future, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Pulp Fiction.
That's going to be the tagline for Shat The Movies. It formerly was, we think everyone's gay and everyone's parents are abusing them. But now it's going to be, The Godfather isn't as good as Dumb and Dumber. Listen to Shat The Movies every week.
I think it's perfect. It's perfect.
All right. Well, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Big D. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week, Stephen King's tale follows a cat into a smoker's clinic, onto the penthouse ledge, and into a girl's bedroom. Commissioned by Adam T. And we've talked about this description, folks. If you know what it is, it's Halloween time. Came out in 1985, and this is a spooky tale for your Halloween enjoyment.
All right. Well, thank you, Adam, for commissioning our upcoming movie. Thank you, Matt, for commissioning The Godfather. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. And thank you so much to Rob for joining us this week and helping out with the edits. We hope to have you on some future episodes as well.
No problem. Pleasure to be here.
All right. You heard that, everyone. He committed. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. You can email us, host@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Rob Will Taylor, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
Stephen King, your favorite novelist and master of modern horror, has written his first motion picture screenplay. It combines all the elements of his creative imagination. Lovable pets, classic cars, quiet evenings, favorite films.
Kill the son of a...
Good idea.
Adorable kids.
Help me! It's after me!
And of course, a monster or two. Experience a series of electrifying adventures as seen through Stephen King's Cat's Eye.
Where's your sense of humor?
Stephen King's Cat's Eye.
And this week's commissioner writes in and says, Dear Shat, the reason I chose to commission The Godfather is not because the 50th anniversary was last year or because I'm 100% Italian from New Jersey, but because of the family connection it has for me. When I was around 8 years old, me and my father went to go to my pop-pop's house. While there, on the small TV in the kitchen was the TV version of The Godfather playing on AMC. I remember my pop-pop complaining that watching the edited version with commercials was like running a marathon due to it being almost 5 hours long. Growing up, I always thought The Godfather was this extremely long movie which had to suck. Then a little show called The Sopranos happened. Every Sunday, me and my father watched it together, and from there, my mobster culture expanded. From Goodfellas to A Bronx Tale, future commission, I started to watch everything about the old school mobsters. Still, the only film I had yet to truly watch was The Godfather. So one Sunday, I went out, bought the DVD set, and sat down on the couch to pony up for a 7-hour marathon of the original mobster story. I can say The Godfather is a true masterpiece. It has such a great arc from Michael not wanting to be part of the life his family is involved in to having to take on a forced role to avenge his father. The Godfather is not about a mob lifestyle as it is more about family. I know I would do anything for my family, just as Michael did for his. Not as extreme, but I'd make sure they were protected. Yet what is truly amazing about this film is you see the innocence washed away slowly. When the end takes place at the church, you just see Michael lack any emotion or sympathy for his actions that he has taken. I do believe this may end up on the top 5 on the Shat charts, or at least I hope it does, because the story from start to end is clear and detailed. Everything is cleared up and explained, leaving no plot holes for the audience to wonder. Nothing is left open-ended to make you wonder if there'll be a second movie. The Godfather is truly a masterpiece, and I hope you both enjoyed watching it and giving it a great score. Or else we all remember what happened to the movie producer. I do believe this is a 100% better film than my last commission, Demolition Man. Thank you again for all you do and your great work. Matt, Don Chachi, Ciampi.